motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes correspondence.
Motion made by Mr. Poussin, seconded by Ms. Kuzma. All in favor? That's unanimous. I'll take it that there was no discussion. Public participation. As a Board of Education, we have a duty to provide respectful and equitable public space for all members of our community to share their input with the board. It is my responsibility as chair to facilitate communication between the public and the board within that space. Behaviors such as loud and disruptive clapping, yelling, and/or incendiary comments that in practice quiet opposing views thwarts the board's duty to provide a respectful and equitable space for public input. Also, comments from the public to other members of the public have no place in the board's public participation. If public behavior becomes disrespectful or intimidating, I may be forced to close or limit such participation, and instead ask that remaining comments be sent to the board by other means like email. During the first public participation, the board welcomes commentary regarding items on the agenda. After being recognized, please state your name and address for the record. We request that speakers be respectful and limit comments to not more than 3 minutes. The Board of Education does not discuss personnel items or student matters in public. During the second public participation, commentary may address the agenda or may introduce issues for the board to consider in the future. The board does not engage in dialogue during either public comment period. If you desire more information or answers to specific questions, please email the board. Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Seeing none, public participation is now closed. Moving on to the reports. Okay, we have 3 special committees still ahead of us. 2 search committees and a contract negotiation committee. As mentioned in my Sunday weekend preview, John Boros will be representing the board on the Newtown Middle School Principal Search Committee. Don Ramsey will be representing the board on the Director Teaching and Learning Search Committee. And Jen Larkin and I will be representing the board on the Teacher Contract Negotiation Committee. As for the recent FOI request, I reached out to Shipman and Goodman Council, to the Shipman and Goodman Council that Dr. Rodriguez is working with, so that we can better understand how the board might address board-related issues. Also, the Legislative Council will be discussing the updates to the town charter tomorrow night. Finally, I received word, this was not in the preview, it was between, I received word from Nick Caruso about the Cave Lighthouse training. He's still awaiting a contract with the Connecticut State Department of Education and cannot start a complementary program prior to the execution of the contract. Given the amount of time that has passed, he's asking those who are interested if we'd like to start prior to the signed contract this fall. It would cost $1,500 per district for the initial session and $1,000 per district for additional sessions. My sense is that we could all probably take some time to wind down from all of the added meetings we've been having lately, so a few months of delay is okay. However, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Have you any thoughts on anything that was said in the chair's report? Very good. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. Good evening. We are planning for the final days of school. Exciting. I will be sending a final communication to all of the parents and staff, which will include some summer updates and events that are going on that might be useful, and also final details of the Hawley project and that move. And we also have a brief update on that tonight in in tonight's agenda as well. We will be honoring juniors and seniors tomorrow night, the annual awards night at the high school. And I know that both the middle school and the high school are preparing for their moving up and the graduation ceremonies, and those take place on June 14th and June 15th. According to the conference call, and we go on weekly with the Connecticut DPH, we talked with them today, and yesterday was the last day for the Project COVID Detect testing program, and we will no longer be needing to continue that in the fall. However, there will continue to be home testing kits next year as well to be sent home to families. And Ann Dalton wanted me to be sure that we thanked everyone at the school level who helped this program run smoothly. We were able to offer over 1,300 COVID PCR screening tests to all interested students and staff since the beginning of the program in February. And finally, we are finalizing staffing needs for next year, although there are always some changes, as I always say to the board, that might take place in the summer. We're really looking at a final number and all of the staffing needs that we have by June 21st before I leave, and I'll share that with the board and all of the details. But I also want to thank Christina and Matt as our student representatives. You've done an outstanding job, so thank you.
Policy has actually had 2 meetings since our last board meeting. Both have been focused on the policies that are coming forward tonight to the board, which need to be passed before July 1st. So that's been our focus, and I will go more in depth on those when we get to that point on the agenda.
Any other committee meetings? Mr. Burrows?
So we had a communications subcommittee meeting, and that consists of Mr. Cruzon, Ms. Kuzma, Dr. Rodriguez, and me. And as I've reported in the past, we're really having a good time with this. And one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to highlight folks that work on the front lines. And last meeting, which was yesterday, the 6th. We had Mr. Matt Memley came by and gave us all kinds of good information about what's going on, during the summer months, because, things don't necessarily shut down in June and then just begin in September, so that's a really good thing. So we heard from him, and then we continued our discussion on future topics, and I don't want to spoil the surprise by getting too much into that, other than to say that it's really good. It's good for the board to communicate with the public on that level. So I guess that's it, and we're just having a really good time with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Ms. Kuzma?
No.
So the Social Emotional Health and Wellness Committee met, and we had Hope Ray, who's a counselor at Reed, and present the Bounce Back program to us, and it was exciting to hear from her. We do talk a lot about the things that are going on in high school, and we dabble in other things, but it was nice to have her come and share what's going on at Reed. And the Bounce Back program, hopefully we can have her come, or the CVITS program that does have come and present to the board maybe in the fall sometime. But that was pretty much it. Ann Dalton touched on a few other community initiatives that she's been doing with the vaping, that they had Trisha Dahl come and speak at in the health classes at the high school. And that's pretty much it.
Any other? Mr. Burrows?
Short on instruction, Matt, and tonight we will be voting on the grade 6 to 8 math pilot resource program, which my colleagues and I have already wholeheartedly wholeheartedly endorse and encourage all of you to do the same, please. We were presented by Mrs. Uberti the curriculum audit update. I encourage all of you to look at the minutes. I'm just going to read a few of the sentences here to whet your appetite. On May 11th and 12th, there was a full and advanced training of 12 teachers. Andy Birdie and Wes Johnson were among the attendees with 2 consultants from Ed Advanced. The training was on curriculum design that included diversity, equity, and inclusion. The Connecticut State Department of Education in March released a document called the K-12 Universal Curriculum Design Principles. The state laid out 6 principles to guide the development of curriculum. The principles are focused, flexibility, coherence, relevance, rigor, and DEI. And it goes on. I encourage you to take a look at the minutes. They're extremely well documented, and it will educate you on this curriculum audit, which is beginning in earnest. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to all of the members of both the committees. Is there any other committee or liaison?
It's more of a liaison, I guess, even though I'm not a liaison to Reed. I had the opportunity to attend one of the 6th grade band concerts here at Reed, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Byerly and the entire music department, really across the district. He was able to play a recording of the students' very first song when they came in 5th grade, in comparison to where they are today. And really just over 2 years, facing all the challenges of the pandemic, it was incredible the progress that they made. So it just was a wonderful thing to be a part of and to be able to witness. So I really appreciate all the hard work that our educators do and that the students and the parents do to support the students in their music education.
Thank you. Any other liaisons? Mr. Poussin.
I also attended the band concert, the 6th grade band concert last week. And it was very impressive to see, as you said, the first song and then to hear them play Bohemian Rhapsody that night. So it was an impressive amount of growth, and there's a lot. A hearty congratulations to the students and to Mr. Byerly for the progress that's made. I also attended yesterday the 3rd grade classes at Meadow, where I am actually the liaison to do their famous figures projects, where they all get a chance to present the figure that they had researched. And again, a lot of work went into that, and some very impressive projects by those 3rd grade students, and it's a lot of fun to finally be able to get back into the schools and enjoy that type of event.
Ms. Larkin.
So just to tack on, I had an opportunity to go to the 5th grade band concert here, and you're so right, both of you. I mean, I'm a parent of a 5th grader who plays a very loud instrument, and I can't say I was really looking forward to it at the beginning of the year, but the progress that they made, it was really impressive. So evidently, which I didn't know until just now, we have Mr. Nolte, who's a different band teacher. So kudos to him as well. And I just say the exact same thing as you guys said, that it's just, they did a great job from start to finish. And I also had the pleasure to attend the 4th grade celebration at Tailgate, as I'm a parent there as well. And again, it was just really nice to be able to see all of the kids move up and receive the certificate. They were so excited to come to Reed. And it really felt like the year's really winding down.
Yes, Mr. Renzi.
And I want to echo the 3 in the strongest terms. This music program in Newtown is just phenomenal. I attended the Spring Music Festival, and when I saw those kids on the stage, it just lit up the room, with the uplifting songs, and the music directors there have just such a wonderful way of developing a rapport with the kids. And I just found it to be a very emotional experience to watch them perform, and to just radiate harmony and good feeling in the entire community, really. So that was until then it's on.
As always, Mr. Royce, the last word.
No,
Yeah, 4 months.
there's no one that can, argue that in this district, the performing arts, visual arts programs are phenomenal. They're beyond phenomenal, and they've always been that way. I attended the Reed String Orchestra performance, and there was not one person in the audience that put their hands up to their ears or had anything but pleasure on their face, because Miss Peters has captivated those children, and they performed so beautifully. So we're always so proud to be able to support the arts in this district.
Ms. Kuzma, last word.
Just so that I can say something. I attended the art show at Quality yesterday and loved it. I'm sure it was very similar to the one here at Reed, where they're gonna all the art up on the walls, but just, you know, the kids get very excited. I think, yeah, you said it, that the kids are excited, but the parents, I think, are excited to be back in school.
So for me to
Oh,
summarize,
and chorus, I think, that's what I think Don was talking about, the chorus concert at Reed, was also fabulous.
so I'm gonna summarize everything. Would you please make sure that our performing arts, directors, instructors, and staff know just the wonderful job and how much the board appreciates all of their hard work?
Absolutely. It's really nice to hear, because we know it, we see it every day, we hear it every day, but to hear board members celebrate that, thank you.
Moving on. I would like to give a big call out to Christina Sabo and Nat Irving, our Newtown High School's student representatives to the Board of Education. This will be their last official meeting. You can sneak in from time to time, and this will be their last official report. They have both been wonderful representatives, helping shed a light into what life as a Newtown high schooler is like. Thank you both for all the time you spend reporting out to the board. And we wish you the best as you move on to the next steps in your lives. And I have a chance for one last time. From each of you, yes. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Well, thank you guys very much. Good evening, everyone. We have some more updates for you today. Class Council of 2025 issued cookies and crayon for all those taking finals to help them prepare. All freshmen reported to the auditorium during first period on June 1st for an assembly on Holocaust Remembrance Day. The spring health fair will take place tomorrow morning from 9 until noon, and students and staff can learn about healthy choices. Shortly after our last meeting, second semester senior experienced students finally got to present their capstone projects, concluding capstone for this year. On May 19th, 43 new members were inducted into the National World Language Honor Society.
Hi, I'm doing. So to continue, on May 26th was the senior unit dance, which you can now pass out. And then the NHS marching band and yard played at the Memorial Day Parade in Washington, D.C. on May 30th, which we're very proud of. Very good. It was actually broadcasted to all the students. And then June 1st was the senior trip to Six Flags. It was a lot of fun for the graduating class. And then the Best Buddy prom was on Saturday. It was a class for everyone who attended. Senior final exams is rest of the school, they start on Friday. And then on Monday, June 13th, it's cap and gown pickup day with the seniors. And then the next day on the 14th, we have graduation rehearsal, as well as our walk through the elementary school, so kids will have a chance to get back to the elementary school, through which I'm personally very excited for. And then on the 15th, we graduate and we pride pickup at the middle state. And I just want to say a big thank you to everyone. This has been a great experience for all of us. We really enjoyed it very group. Christina and I were just really thankful because it was just so much fun. I just want to thank you for being so supportive and welcoming and kind for the whole year. And it was just such a great thing to be a part of. And it's really obvious for us to see how much you guys care. Almost 2 years. So thank you again.
I just want to second that. And I also want to say thank you very much for this opportunity.
So, 1 more minute, members, discussion? Mr. Crusoe?
I just want to say that I'm really glad we could walk through the elementary schools this afternoon again this year, because one of those things that came from a bad situation, but I'm definitely glad that it has continued.
We are too.
Ms. Larkin?
Just want to say thank you guys for your dedication to, and best of luck to you. You guys are really great.
I just wanted to, sorry.
No?
I'm going to be taking it.
Mr. Terry?
It's been great.
Thank you.
Yes,
Good luck to both of you, and thank you for showing up and representing the schools of Newtown. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rose?
Where are you going to college?
I'm just going to be Providence College.
I'm going to the
Ms. Herman, would you like the last word?
I guess. Christina, I already spoke to you before the meeting started, but I've been following your career since my son was in kindergarten and I guess you were in 2nd grade. I remember when you drew the yearbook cover for the Levy yearbook, and you've always been so successful in everything you do, so I can't wait to see what you're going to do. I just met you this school year, but you seem fantastic as well, and everything that you've been doing this year is very impressive, and I know that both of you have an amazing future ahead, so we can't wait to hear about it. And please do come back so that we can keep in touch with you and see how your future is progressing. So thank you for everything you've done for our district.
No, we understand finals are right around the corner, and if you need to go on, it's absolutely fine. Just always keep us in a nice place for your work.
We will.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
We do have a debrief for predecessors.
Very good. Okay, moving on to presentations. Today, we're going to be seeing a presentation, have possible action on grade 6 design that pilot resource.
Take a second, get it? No? Can everybody hear me okay?
They will not be able to hear you on the tape.
Yeah.
Okay. So tonight we'll be presenting the end of the year report for our grade 6 to 8 math pilot, and also making a recommendation for our final resource selection as a result of the pilot. As part of the discussion tonight, I wanted to give the members of the board some background information as to why we piloted. We actually started this process in the spring of 2021, so we do have new board members, and I just wanted to paint the full picture for you as to why we are here where we are now, and we're making that recommendation for resources. We'll talk a little bit about the goals of the pilot and a description of the 2 programs that we used. We'll discuss the pilot teams, the results of the evaluation rubrics that we use to gather feedback from our teachers, the classroom observation findings, from observations that myself and Andy Birdie did all year in those math classrooms. And then ultimately the final resource selection and the discussion of the next steps after the selection. So why did we pilot? Three major reasons. In 2019, students were experiencing three different math resources in grades K through 8. One resource in K4, another one in K5-6, and a third in 7-8. And this resulted in inconsistent presentation of material, inconsistent strategies, inconsistent terminology that students were exposed to over that K-8 span. Our goal was to get this down to a uniform resource, ideally one resource, but 2 resources if we could, instead of 3. Simultaneously, those resources in K4 and 5-6 were also outdated. Our K4 resource was a 2011 edition, and our 5-6 resource was a 2014 edition. So we had concerns regarding standards alignment and rigor. We also confirmed this by an extensive number of classroom observations in 2019 and a review of our math performance on standardized testing, which had been declining over a 3-year period. Added to that, our resources in grades 7 and 8 were operating on a series of 1-year renewal contracts, and those resources only partially met the expectations for rigor and standard alignment that were reported out by the nonprofit organization at reports.org that does some vetting of resources for public schools, and I'll talk a little bit more about them as we move forward. So these were our 3 main reasons for piloting. As a result of these reasons, we actually adopted a K-5 program last year, Bridges Math. So we're also looking for a resource that would marry well with what we adopted in K-5. So as I said, the process for selecting the resource began in the spring of 2021. We assembled a team of math teachers, specialists, administrators to meet and vet resources potentially that we would adopt. Honestly, there's dozens and dozens of math resources out there, and you want to have some standard for what you're going to review to pick those resources. So our non-negotiables were that the resources we selected would meet the highest standards for expectations in terms of standards alignment, rigor, and usability, as reported out by Ed Reports. The last factor we considered was the publishing date. We didn't want to adopt something that was somewhat dated already, even though it was a quality resource. We didn't want to be put in a situation where we might adopt a resource where we have to then buy another revised version of the new edition came out. So we used 2020 as our target date for publication. With all that, we narrowed our choices down to 3 resources: Learn Zillion's Illustrative Math, McGraw-Hill Illustrative Math, and HMH Into Math. Once we identified the resources, we invited representatives from those publishing companies into the district to present to our teams. As part of that presentation, they took us through lessons, they showed us the digital resources that were available, they gave us access to the print materials as well as the online resources for our independent review as well. From there, we then narrowed the selection down to 2 resources that we would pilot in the fall of 2021. Those 2 resources were the McGraw-Hill Illustrative Math and HMH Into Math. Both, as I mentioned before, received the highest ratings from Ed Reports for 6-8 math programs. They were also emphasized problem-based core math instruction with a focus on thinking critically and using real-world application of that. I wanted to give the board an idea of who participated in the pilot. These are our grade 6, 7, and 8 teachers. We purposely wanted to make sure that we had both resources operating in each of the schools and each of the grades, so that it would encourage dialogue between the teachers throughout the year as to the successes they were having with it and also the challenges. So we knew that if we had both of those resources in the building, there was opportunities for those teachers to speak about their experiences. Ultimately, the goals of our pilot were to adopt a resource that supported rigorous math instruction and that was fully aligned to our current curriculum standards. Again, adopting a resource that would eliminate the 3 different resources that were in play and bring it down to some uniform practice, either 1 resource or 2 resources. And again, at the time, as of now, we adopted the Bridges K-5, so we were looking for one that would align well in the 6th, 8th grade levels. So in terms of considerations for picking one of the 2 resources, throughout the pilot, twice we asked teachers to fulfill an evaluation rubric, once in the fall and once in the spring. As part of that rubric, they would give us their feedback in terms of the content, the level of rigor, the alignment, the conceptual understanding that was present, the types of assessments that were there, the technology support, and the organization. We also did a number of classroom observations throughout the year. When I say we, myself and Amy Birdie, focused specifically on 6-8 math classrooms that we're piloting, either into math or illustrative math. And then a lot of informal discussions with our math specialists and teachers as to how they were experiencing the resources throughout the year. Just want to talk first about the evaluation rubric. I mentioned that there were 3 major areas: organization, content, and technology. And we also allowed for some open-ended feedback as part of that rubric so that we can get some written responses from our teachers as well. The first section dealt with organization. A sample question would be something like you see here. Does the resource provide useful table of contents, a glossary? Is it appropriate in terms of print and size? Are there appropriate graphs, pictures, charts? So when we looked at the feedback in terms of organization regarding the 2 resources, here's what came out. A possible 210 points for the organization section. Into math received 181 of those points. Illustrative math received 118 points. We looked at that in terms of percentages. Into math received 85% of the total possible points for the organizational section. Illustrative math received 56% of those points. The next part of our evaluation rubric dealt with content. Some of the questions you might find here would be whether or not the resource provided students single and multi-step problems so that we can develop problem-solving skills. Was the resource designed to provide opportunities for students to reason mathematically, through discussion, written work, and independent thinking? Did the content respect the differentiated needs of all learners? So when we take a look at the content section and compare the 2 resources, of a possible 1,680 points that were available, into math received 1,376, illustrative math 788. Another way to look at this in terms of percentages is that into math received 82% of the total possible points, where illustrative math received 47%. And the last section of the rubric dealt with technical supports, the online components, the digital components that will come with the program. A sample question would be something like, does the technology that comes with the series enhance and complement instruction? When we looked at the results of the technical supports that were provided by both resources, of a possible 420 points, into math received 313, illustrative math received 136. In terms of percentages, 75% of the total possible points in the technical supports category went into math, 32% went to English. One question that we asked teachers was an overall comparison of the 2 resources. Essentially what we were asking is, what's your overall impression after conducting the pilot? Was it a positive or negative experience? All but 1 teacher who participated in the Into Math pilot reported that it was a positive experience. Conversely, all the teachers that participated in using the illustrative program, although there was positive feedback when challenged to just give us one answer on it, they did say it was more of a negative experience. And we'll see some of the responses, and you'll see that there were pros, but in their minds that the cons did outweigh the pros. somewhat anticlimactic. Into math did prevail in all three categories in illustrative math when compared to illustrative math. Again, I mentioned that we did collect verbal and written feedback from the teachers, as well as conducting our own classroom observations. The data we collected through the verbal feedback regarding Math was extremely positive, especially in regard to three different areas: building problem-solving skills, building perseverance in math, and giving students opportunities to engage in real-world application of math. Math feedback also emphasized that there were extensive materials available for students in need of both support and enrichment. Again, teachers who did work through the illustrative math pilot did indicate that the resource was rigorous, but it wasn't as supportive of the differentiated needs of students. And a common theme that we saw is there were a limited number of problems offered for each of the lessons for teachers to work from. Here's a quick summary of these are the teacher comments directly. I didn't want to summarize for them. I wanted you to see the exact wording that they put in here. I put some in bold. In regard to Math, teachers felt that the resource will definitely help our students strengthen their problem-solving skills. Teachers felt that the online resources were quite extensive. Teachers felt that students were given opportunities to build perseverance and problem-solving, and that students had time collaborating and reasoning through problems. Again, a few more Math comments. Teachers liked the way each lesson was presented with scaffolding, and they liked that the program gave teachers the opportunity to be more of a facilitator at times, providing support to struggling learners. Comparatively, I also wanted to show you some of the illustrative math comments. Teachers felt that the resource encouraged discussion among the students, but not enough foundational support for them. And they did mention that compared to the program that they were using before the pilot, that they did feel that there was an increased level of rigor. I did want to mention, I should put this in bold, regarding illustrative, teachers did feel that they did hear from parents that it was more challenging for them to help their children at home. Again, one more set of the illustrative comments. Teachers were not thrilled with the technology that came to support that particular resource. And again, there were some pros, but ultimately that last bullet really did sum things up, that they felt that the cons of the resource far outweighed the pros. So again, considering those three factors, the feedback from our evaluation rubric, our classroom observations throughout the year, and again, verbal and written feedback that we collected into Math was our choice. And that is the resource that we're recommending to the board for adoption. And we did something very similar to curriculum instruction. We gave a similar presentation there, but I wanted to make sure the full board did have an opportunity to see the work that the teachers did throughout the year. In terms of next steps, from here on out, we'd like to, again, meet with our math teachers and specialists so that we can finalize the order. There is some urgency. We'd like to get that material in before the end of the year, ideally, or as early to the summer as possible. We do have teachers that would like to get a hold of that material for the summertime, get familiar with it before we start the fall. Marty in talks with the representatives from the Math on our professional development program for the fall. Again, and that may include scheduled support throughout the school year as needed. And of course, written communication will go out to parents and family regarding the selection of resources. And as always, I can't, number one, thank the teachers enough that were involved in the pilot. We're so appreciative of the dedication they showed throughout the year. The last couple of years have been challenging, and they really did put their best foot forward and do this with as much fidelity as possible, giving us some tremendous feedback as to what they thought about both of them, and that included our math specialists and our special education teachers that participated. And I can't thank Dr. Rodriguez enough for her support, and as well as the members of the Board of Education who have been so supportive in terms of what we're doing here and trying to improve curriculum instruction. So thank you. That's it.
Are there any discussion? Questions? Ms. Sullivan?
First, I just want to thank you publicly for the work that you've done in our district. We know that you will not be with us for much longer, and we're sad about that, but really the difference that you've made in just a short time is incredible. And this work on this is just like everything else you've done, impeccable, and you've given us all the information we need to make a good decision. I just have a couple questions.
Thank you.
I believe at least one of the teachers that piloted this resource was a 6+ math teacher at Reed.
Yes.
And how does that work with the 6+? Were they able to differentiate? Were they using a different resource, or how will that work going forward?
So yes and yes on all of those. One thing we did like about both of the resources that we selected, and I didn't put it in the presentation, they do offer an accelerated version of this particular program, so it would fit nicely into the 6+ and then into our 7 advanced and into algebra as well, our 7, 8 and algebra. So both resources had that option, and we like that it had that option. So we did have those 6+ teachers involved, and those are the same ones that gave us the information about differentiation and how much there was for enrichment as well as for intervention and support.
Great. I have one more question. Thank you so much. Obviously, it was hands down, you had a winner, and, it made, I guess, the choice easy. But it seemed like there was still room for improvement even on the resource that was selected. Was there anything that was troubling for you that, you've been in contact with the developer, with some feedback? Because while 75 to 82% is great, it seems like there are some areas that maybe could be improved if the resource was even better for the students in our district.
I think it's a great question. I think 2 areas come to mind, Rebecca, on that is, I talked a little bit about the technology components that go with it. There is an extensive amount with the into math version. I don't think teachers really, in 1 year, you don't get a full grasp of what those are. So I have had teachers reach out to say that they would like to focus on the professional development to really focus on the digital component side. So we will have a focus there. And the second piece of that was, certainly teachers get to experience some of the support material for students that are struggling with math, but we've also had requests that we can get more professional learning in that area, because there are resources there. It's just a matter of making sure teachers are familiar with it.
I have 2 questions, and I was going to give an easy one first, but the hard one piggybacks off of the previous question.
Sure.
Is there any concern around, so the 6th graders that piloted this year, piloted the 2 programs last year, and we're dealing with learning loss from the pandemic still. Is there any concern that either or both of those may have colored the results of the pilot, or something that we need to be concerned about?
I mean, obviously we're concerned about learning loss and the
I
effects
mean,
of the pandemic. I don't want you to feel like I'm
concerned
throwing that
about
out.
as far as selecting a program.
I would say no. I would say because of what I said in the first slide, we were working through 2 resources before that were dated. I don't want to say that math instruction was bad, because it wasn't. But certainly we could have had improved resources at those grade levels. One of the things that all of the teachers who participated in these pilots, I mentioned both this one and Bridges last year, is that the piloted resources were better than the ones that they were using. So that was always encouraging to hear from them. So we felt as if we were still giving them better support material than what they were using before. Because some of the material was dated, and I think they were shocked to see how far some of the resources had come over the years and all the extra components that were involved. Some of the way the math presented has obviously changed, but we've seen a lot of great math interaction in those classrooms with the new resource, and we've seen those similar types of math dialogue taking place with students, and that interaction and hands-on learning in our 6-8 pilot as well.
Okay, so you don't think it was impacted really by either of those?
I wouldn't say it was impacted positively or negatively.
I think the results would have come out roughly the same.
I truly do. And we did have to monitor what iWriting going on for the year to track student performance. So if we saw a major drop off at some point, but we saw growth throughout the year in math. So that was encouraging as well.
And then the easier one is, if you went into this with the thought of trying to get a cohesive resource across K-8, why did you end up going with 2 instead of aiming for 1?
That's a great question. And the answer to that is, unfortunately, Bridges does not have a 6-8 component. It may down the road at some point or another, but it did force us to find something that would marry well with it. So we do feel that we put 2 resources on the table that will integrate very well with the Bridges resource. If there were one, we would have advocated obviously for that to continue through the 6-8.
Just in all the research, even when you were doing the K-5 one, you didn't find one that met the other criteria that you were looking at.
We feel that we picked the best,
Right.
and that was done by a team. I mean, it was done by the right group of people in the right room. Our specialists, our math teachers and administrators that have been involved with the K-5, and again with our 6-8. So we were confident that what we put forward were the right resources.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, so I'm gonna take this opportunity, first off, you guys did excellent questioning. Really, kudos to you, it was very good questioning. Mr. Picaro, or Dr. Picaro, you did excellent answers of those questions, so kudos to you also. It's gonna be really sad for us to leave, but Amity is Amity, right?
Yes.
Amity is going to get 1 heck of an assistant superintendent.
Thank you.
You and Ms. Verity made an exceptional team. And you each brought your own special skills, going through the K-5 math program, going through I don't know if you were part of the foundation or if that predated you, going through the 5 through 8, and of course, transferring us to the iReady, and then keeping us abreast in terms of what that level, which is exceptional work. So thank you for everything that you've done for this district, and best wishes in Amity.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Enjoyed every minute of it. I really do mean what I say in that last slide. I appreciate all of your support. You've been so supportive to me over these last few years. I can't thank you enough for that. I promised Dr. Rodriguez, and I wouldn't talk about it. We're not talking about it until I leave officially, so because we just kind of go about business like it is, but it's been an absolute pleasure.
I would say, I absolutely agree. And it's just been a pleasure to work with Frank. And the only thing that I can say to myself is that it was a real blessing that the board supported the position when he supported it, and that it was him that walked in the door, because we would never, what we were able to accomplish during the pandemic year would just not have been possible at all. You know, Lori was doing a million things, and Frank and I really did team up with a lot of support from staff who stepped up to the plate, and the technology department, and that made a huge difference. And I think that we're going to see our students rebound faster in this district because of the work and the amount of the continuity that we were able to provide. We all know it wasn't perfect, that's for sure, but in comparison to what was happening in other districts, we did a great job, and it really would not have been possible without having somebody who really was so experienced and complemented the skills that I have. So we're really grateful. And on top of that, we did all those things that you just said, and that is pretty amazing. So thank you so much for doing this.
So the 3 of us are in denial. That's why we haven't really talked about this, that we're not going to be together. It's really difficult because I remember really pushing, as you all know, for the director of teaching and learning position to begin with. And we were so, I mean, that really was, we were so thankful to finally get that, and thank you all for supporting that. But when Frank came, we knew he was the right person for that position. And so it's a known fact around central office. I call them peanut butter and jelly because they just go so well together. And I'm going to miss Frank and Ann because I'll be leaving so much. So thank you both for your outstanding work and really being the greatest assistants a superintendent could ever have. So thank you.
Excellent.
Move that the Board of Education approve HTM into math as the grade 6 to 8 math pilot resource.
Second. Motion made by Mr. Cruson, seconded by Ms. Harriman. Discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on to old business. We will have our Holly update.
So we just wanted to make sure that we gave you all a final update, so I just want to thank Jenna Connors and Keller McLaren and Carla Tishio for coming back again. Just so so that they can give you a final update on the details, and I know that Mr. Moretti is here as well. And as you know, once this meeting is over, I'll be sending out communication with parents and staff so that they have that final information as well. So thank you.
Great, well, good evening. Last time we met, we were under much different circumstances. We were virtual. We were virtual January 4th, and I'm so excited to announce we've made so much progress since then. I'm just going to speak specifically about the Sandy Hook piece and Holly coming over. We're ready to welcome Holly kindergarten and first grade to Sandy Hook. Talking about our numbers, our current projections for next year, we'll have a total of 28 classrooms in Sandy Hook School that will be housed 21 Sandy Hook School classrooms, 7 Holly classrooms, and our breakdown will be 7 kindergarten classrooms total for Sandy Hook, 3 Holly, 9 first grades. This will be our largest grade next year with 5 sections of first grade in Sandy Hook and 4 from Holly School. And then Sandy Hook will have 4 sections of second, third, and fourth. Our unified arts, reading, math, special education, paraeducators, we're excited to welcome all of those folks from Holly. At this time, we're also really pleased to announce, Carla, that we only have one of our unified arts classes that will not be held in a separate space. At this point, because of the shifting in some numbers, and again, at this moment, it would just be our Spanish class that would be taught in the classroom, which is very similar to what happened a few years ago. It's only been a year or two that we've had a dedicated space for Spanish. Schedules, we collaborated. We have an excellent draft schedule already in place for next year at this point. We have worked to create a schedule that I think Carla and I feel is really truly best for kids. For example, if we have the gymnasium and we have 2 PE teachers, we have 2 kindergarten classes being taught at the same time, or 2 first grade classes being taught at the same time, with staff that has the opportunity to co-teach those classes, which is so nice so that we don't have separate gym classes going on. It's really great for kids to have that opportunity. We're still putting finishing touches on that in other areas, but we're really happy that we're making that work for the kids. I think that's actually a really nice experience for them. A lot of the kids know each other from outside of school as well, so we're really excited about that. And then just to sum up the actual move part of the project, all the kindergarten and first grade teachers have come over to Sandy Hook, seen the space, taking pictures, some measurements. Everybody's pretty excited and eager to get going. The custodians have been wonderful, very helpful. The rest of the staff members are going to come over probably within, later this week or next week if they'd like to come over. And we also have done some touring with Dennis for all of our technology needs and with Bob to help with all of our building needs, and everything is in place for that. So we're moving along.
So I reiterate a lot of the same for Reed, and we are very excited to welcome second, third, fourth grade to Reed. And we've talked about things that we can do to make staff and students and families all feel welcome. And I do think it's going to be a good year. We actually had a 6th grade teacher when we were meeting at PLCs this week say one of the things that she was excited about for next year was having little ones in the building where they can do buddy reading, the 6th graders can. So I think there's a lot of opportunity that we're all excited about.
Reed's a little different. We're gonna, house Holly in the blue house hallway upstairs. So they'll almost be like a school within a school. The plan is to have all 9 classrooms in blue house hallway. There will still be one 5th grade cluster at the end of blue house, so toward the 5th grade greenhouse hallway. But all 9 Holly classrooms will be in blue house. There will be a special education room, space for speech, a private space for the school counselor and psychologist. They have their own office, an intervention room, and Holly will have their own main office and conference room in the house. We will have some shared spaces. We plan to share a project challenge room between Reed and Holly. The LLC will be shared space. So in here, this area back here will be Holly's books, and the last classroom will be where library is held, or library classes are held, and then Mrs. Watson will be able to have her classes in the actual space in the library. And OT and PT share space also. For the unified arts or specials, they all have their own space as well. Art and music now each have their own classroom. We thought they were going to have to share space. Now they'll have their own classroom. Music will be in the music wing here at Reed, and they'll use the cafeteria one day with 6 days cycle for chorus, so that'll be good. Art will be in its own classroom right off the main lobby. The room that's used as, sometimes PTA uses that room, 262. So right here are art rooms as well, so our teachers can collaborate and share the time needed. PE is going to be actually held in the cafeteria because the gym is booked pretty much every period between the Project Adventure gym and the regular gym. So PE for Holly is going to be in the cafeteria. It's going to be periods 1, 2, and 3 before our lunch break start. And the PE teacher will have an office and rooms in the hallway, so right nearby with the storage space nearby as well. Let's see. So in terms of, we have our 28 Reed classrooms, we have our 9 Holly classrooms. There are about 20 Reed staff who are moving locations to accommodate for the extra space. We would identify storage where things can be placed for Reed staff or have to move as well as Holly staff. We've also worked on schedules, and again, we kind of have two separate school schedules operating in the same building, but it looks like it's something that we can work. We're going to put our heads together over the summer for like every possible delayed opening scenario. Those will be, challenging, but I don't think they won't be able to work out. Several of Holly staff have come over to see their spaces, and I think now that everyone knows where they're moving, and have been able to kind of wrap their heads around that, I think there's been a lot of comfort in just knowing, and knowing that plans are in place. I think that's it. Any questions or comments? Want to add anything?
So I really just want to thank Jenna and Kelly for their collaborative style and efforts. Really, this has been a collaborative effort, and Holly feels very welcome in both spaces, and it's all very appropriate. And literally moments ago, Jen and I were still trying to work out how we could give Spanish a room so that they weren't on a carpet. So it's a work in progress, and at Holly is a buzz with packing, and we're going to do more than half of our containers. So, and more are on the way. And we're just grateful. We're grateful for how welcome we are, and over the summer, other things will get worked out, where their parent educators, which parent educator goes to what building. I'm told that is something akin to the NFL draft pick, who gets who. So I think everybody is starting to get very excited. Anxiety levels are coming down, people are busy.
Thank you very much. Questions? Mr. Ramsey?
I just want to make a comment. I know how it is for a teacher to set up in the beginning of the year under normal circumstances, but I just want to offer a public thank you from the bottom of our heart on the Board of Ed. It's just a tremendous effort logistically and all they're doing to make that happen. And to have these groups of kids team together too, that would really be a good thing. So please thank them for me, and I'm sure I speak for others on the board when I say that.
Mr. Boros.
When we knew this was gonna happen, I was, commented on the fact that I hoped that there would be co-teaching going on, and I heard it tonight, and that part for me as an educator is thrilling, because it will be fantastic. It will be fantastic, it will make you all very proud.
Any other comments? Thank you so much. It sounds like plans are well underway, and it sounds like it's gonna be a very successful start to a very successful year. We look forward to hearing more of it as the year progresses. It's in good hands.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Moving on to new business. Is there a motion?
Move that the Board of Education ratify the contract negotiated between Christopher Melillo and the board for a period of 3 years commencing on July 1st, 2022 and continuing through June 30th, 2025.
Motion made by Mr. Crusoe, seconded by Mr. Boros. Discussion. Okay, so this is really more of a formality, so that basically the contract, you've all seen the contract, you've all seen the particulars of the contract, and this is just a basic additional. So, hearing no more discussion, all in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Crusoe?
Do you have a dollar figure to go with this motion?
Okay. So let us have a discussion first. Okay. So I reached out to Dr. Collins, and I asked what the services would be in terms of mentoring. We know that we have the option for Cade, and Cade is complimentary, is that correct? And so, Dr. Rand Collins basically responded by saying he would give 2 meetings a month. 1 meeting would be in person, 1 meeting would be by Zoom. It would be available on phone, whatever necessary. The overall basic charge per month would be $475. There would be an additional charge if additional time was needed. I think it was about $195. All told for 12 months, using the $475, that would be $5,700 that we would need to come up with. And I would have to, after we talk a little bit, then I'm going to ask Ms. Goddess to say a few words. I'm not comfortable with just leaving it at 57. My sense is if we could go up to 6,000, it might make sense. That gives us a little bit of room for a couple of extra services. Given the difficulty of what we're going through at this point and everything like that. Ms. Goddess, would you like to talk about budgeting?
Just on the table that is on.
Yeah, so as of right now, I was going through the budget, there are a couple of items that I can, I'm actually going to be using this year, which is the other one in next year's budget. So we're going to initiate some of the training in finance, and we're going to purchase those hours this year, so that's $3,500 that we can use for next year for professional development training. Also, other professional services, we've already started our local study for next year. So we're spending that money this year, and that's $2,000. So I have about $6,000, $7,000 that we could potentially use. There's a couple of other areas, but it was right off the bat, so I can come up with right now.
So, yes, Mr. Crusoe. My request is 7, so we can land with 6,000.
You want to make the motion or any discussion?
Is there more discussion, or shall we make the motion?
I have discussion after the motion.
Mine can go on either side.
So let's make the motion.
Move that the Board of Education designate Randall Collins as Christopher Melillo's mentor for a period of 1 year and for a total cost of not more than $6,000.
Motion made by Mr. Cruson, seconded by Mr. Ramsey. Discussion? Ms. Harriman?
There's a couple of things that you said that I just wanted some clarification on. I guess first, you said 2 meetings a month and then calls as necessary, and then you said $195. So are the calls billed at $195 an hour? I mean, I just want to get some clarification about what that extra that you're talking about was.
The calls are not extra charge. It is if he has to come here and meet in person or something of significance that we would have to be by video. So it will be additional for the same caliber of discussion as the initial 2 meetings.
Okay, and then do we have a comparison to what CAVE offers, their mentor, with what their mentor program looks like as far as time and availability of the mentor to the superintendent?
Do we have that?
No, I don't. I didn't know that, I was not aware that we needed to collect that information. And I think CAPS has a program as well, so. Yeah, my question is gonna be the same, is do we have a comparison to what services CAPS offer?
With your membership?
We do not, but what we could do, if you feel more comfortable, is we can postpone this until our next meeting. Is there any discussion that you'd like to add to this particular meeting at this point? Mr. Ramsey?
I don't know whether this is appropriate to offer, an opinion about, who that consultant might be, but I think in favor of, Dr. Collins, that, in the process of conducting the public surveys, in the process of, interviewing board members and walking along with us in the process of interviewing the candidates, as well as, his connections with municipal officials, first selectmen, et cetera, along with, his knowledge and connection with, Mr. Norillo, that it appears to me that it's well worth the expenditure to have that type of continuity. So at this juncture, I would offer that opinion.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Larkin?
I guess, you read my mind on, or read yours, one of the two. I think that, Mr. Collins would be a really good fit, and then we could briefly discuss that prior. And really the point that I made, we spent a considerable amount of time, on the search, with the district, with the, staff, with ourselves, and then obviously with the candidates who ultimately, Mr. Nola. So, and I think he did a really good job. It's not just about the time. I actually, he was very, dedicated. It doesn't surprise me that he wouldn't charge for phone calls, because of how available I think he was to us as well.
Ms. Harriman?
I just want to clarify that this is not any indication that I'm not supportive of Dr. Collins and the work he did on the superintendent search. However, I feel that we pay a considerable amount of membership dues to both CAVE and CAPS, and this is something that they offer with our membership. So I think without having information about what exactly that service offers us, I wouldn't feel comfortable spending the district's money, unbudgeted money, on something like that at this time. So I would prefer to postpone until we have more information. I assume that would be part of the discussion.
Any further discussion?
When you investigate the CAVE and what they're offering us, I'd like to know who would be doing it, and what their, qualifications are, where they're coming from. It's key for us to know who's going to be mentoring our next superintendent.
Mr. Cruson, given you were one of the co-chairs of the search committee, and you are connected very well with Kate, would you have the time to follow up and ask these questions?
Yeah, I can follow up on the K then to find out, what's available from them.
Including, who the most likely.
Yeah, I don't know if they'd be able to necessarily answer that, they might be able to give us some general idea of
too hear the concern, but I would have a question in terms of, due to the fact that Mr. Melillo is due to begin on July 1st, do I have that right? The time involved in any kind of a delay to explore this further could be a factor also. I, again, would like to say that it's good to have somebody in place and ready to go, you know, that has the type of preparation I made reference to earlier.
So what I'd like to propose is that we have a motion to postpone it to our June 21st meeting. And that should give you sufficient time in which to get this information.
Yeah, will somebody be reaching out to CAPS as well?
I think they're one and the same, aren't they?
No. Cable CAPS are two different organizations.
I can reach out to CAPS. Is there anyone else who would like to reach out to CAPS? Okay, I will reach out to CAPS.
I think postponing till June 21st, there should be plenty of time to get information.
Very good. So do I have a motion?
I move that we postpone the motion until June 21st.
Second.
Mr. Kutzon makes the motion, Ms. Harriman seconds it. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Ramsey is opposed, the rest are in favor. So now we're on discussion and possible action of a food service bid.
Motion.
Would you like the discussion first or the motion?
Move that the Board of Education award the food services bid to Chartwell's as recommended by the Food Service Committee. Second.
Mr. Kutzon made the motion, and seconded. Discussion?
I'd like to say, so first of all, I'd like to thank my committee members. I think we had a learning experience going through this process together as Mr. Ramsey, and myself. So I just want to give you a quick overview of our bid evaluation process. First of all, you probably are aware that this is a federal contract, so it's very strict guidelines. Everything is from the state of Connecticut, and actually an RFP that comes out of the state is a boilerplate bid contract. Everybody in the state of Connecticut uses the same. So when the RFP was sent out, we received 2 bid proposals, one from the incumbent, which is Chartwell's. Along with the RFP was an evaluation tool, the state, again, every district has to use this tool. And each member of the committee has to go through a book for display. This is actually the RFP, which is very different from the RFP. It's about 450 pages. I would have brought the other one, but very heavy. So each member had a couple of days, maybe about a week, to go through the RFP and take this evaluation form and score based on 11 different pieces of criteria. The scoring had a maximum amount of points that you could give in each area, and each member went through and scored for part of it. When the scores came back to central office, we tallied everything up, and Chartwell's did not score 95. And again, it's based on different areas of criteria, not just one area. And Winston's came up with 90. So, based on this evaluation, we'd like to recommend as a committee that we move forward with Chartwell's as our new vendor. And what you would be doing tonight is just awarding the bid. The contract still has to go to the state, and it has to be approved before it can go to the board.
Any further discussion? Ms. Harriman?
I just have a question about the current rates and exams that work in our school. What does that transition look like? And then will they be offered positions within the contractor? I know we changed, I believe, from Chartwell's to Whitson, or, a few years ago. I made sense.
So after tonight, once the bid is before, I can make a official list of items, and they would proceed with their own ways as it is. But typically what happens is, we'll reach out to the employees and just offer them positions. So that will happen.
unanimously. Next item in the business is discussion and possible action on continuation of school activity fund accounts.
Move that the Board of Education approve continuation of the school activities fund accounts.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. Kusan makes the motion. Ms. Harriman seconds it.
So every year we do go through this process and just really provide some transparency, an overview of all our school activity funds as well as continuing education. We do this typically every year, period in March. The reports came in somewhat late this year, that's why you're receiving it now. We did switch over to new financial software systems. I did bring some, I'm sorry that this is not in the packet, but I do have the activity in each school. They're used to that capacity in the past. But yeah, just to give you a quick overview that, you have to remember one thing about these accounts is they are special revenue accounts. They do belong to the students. It is, the Board of Education does have a fiduciary responsibility to oversee these accounts, and each year these accounts are audited with our external audits team. So, the high school, I don't know, do you have any questions about the accounts? Again, the balances have been increasing a little bit because last year was just different year with COVID, a lot of balances weren't spent now. The high school activity account is probably, is the biggest one. You have different accounts included in the activity. You have student enterprise accounts, which are actual businesses. You have the pay-to-play that runs through the student activity. There's some classroom accounts and department accounts. And, it goes down from there. So the middle school has some are set up with the activity accounts from elementary schools. In elementary schools, typically use them for field trips. Parents will pay for the field trip and will pay for the bus under the activity account on the location. Do you have any questions about, I guess the high school is the biggest. I can pass these around. You can take a look. The high school, just so you know, does have 162 accounts alone, which is big. Every account is all. And if you look at the balances in there, they average about $5,700 per account. So I know it looks like a large balance, but it's several accounts. The middle school has 63 accounts. Reed has 30, and it goes down to elementary school. There's been questions about, I'm just going to look it up, there's been questions about the CD in the high school. That is actually part of the total balance of the activity account. It's about $92,000, I believe, right now. So that came into play in 2003. And what happened was the balances at that time, I guess, were what they were using, so they decided to take two amounts and put them into CDs. It's been there ever since. So we just keep rolling it over and over.
Are there any questions? I will simply say it's very frustrating having all of this COVID because it messes up really looking at finances in particular because there are a lot of field trips that were taken. And so the normal question I would have is how does this year over years in the last 5 or 7 years, but that question is nonsensical in these particular times. So all I can say is I hope that one day we get back to normal where I can ask that question again.
And it is up to the student body to determine what they think is going to balances on. So at some point we should.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously. Okay. That brings us to first read of policies. Mr. Crusoe.
So we have, it was originally three policies that were brought to the policy committee that were required by state mandate by July 1st. After talking with legal team, we discovered that we could actually combine two of them into one policy, and us being in favor of fewer policies when possible, jumped on that chance. So what we brought to you tonight are two policies. The first is 6141.51/6141.52, enrollment in an advanced course or program and challenging curriculum. This is the one that we ended up being able to combine. That's why it's dual numbered. We've spent 3 meetings on this now, going through it, adjusting the language, cleaning it up a bit. In red, you can see this is primarily what we got from Shipman. The red is the changes that we made. The crossouts are stuff that we removed. But it has been approved as meeting this will meet the requirements from the state of Connecticut for what we need by July 1st. So we're putting it forward as such.
Any discussion? Okay, I have one piece about this, Ms. Herring.
On page, well, I guess it's supposed to be page C, but it kind of runs down. So it's the bottom of page C, under guiding principles and implementation, I think that's point 4. That first sentence, I think it said previously, or the content was in some iteration, the board is aware that marginalized groups are chronically underrepresented in advanced level high school courses and programs of similar rigor. Was removed, and maybe marginalized groups was inserted instead of marginalized groups are chronically underrepresented. I think there is evidence that marginalized groups are chronically underrepresented in advanced level high school courses, so I'm just wondering why that change was made.
The original language actually was, the board is aware that minorities are chronically underrepresented. Shipman actually brought forward a concern about that language, saying that that we were admitting that it was happening for certain in our schools. And there were committee members that also shared that concern, and without data backed up with that language. We changed it to marginalized groups to broaden it, instead of just being minority. And we changed it to maybe to alleviate the concerns around the word "are" because it makes it a more global without being indefinite, that we don't have data back.
I would contend that it's pretty easy to find data about that, but I do like the change to marginalized groups on words. So I appreciate that change, but the other items on the list was really.
Any other comments? We can do one of two things. We can offer an amendment if you feel strongly that way, and go on the amendment, or we can keep that as is.
This is a first read.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right, this is the first read. So, long day, very long day. So let us, I have one other comment too, is I think just in terms of housekeeping, the initial introductory paragraph that was in the Shipman recommendation is the first paragraph that we see at the top. And you will see as you read it that the 2 recommended introductory paragraphs, which is more of a bringing together what had been the original CAVE policies, that they were intended to replace the first paragraph and not add to it. So you'll see, for example, the Newtown Board of Education, the board is in both paragraphs. And I just think that that was a mistake in not to cross out the first paragraph.
I have to spend more time remembering that discussion, because I thought we kept the original and added the 2, but we can have that for discussion at our next policy before we come back for a second reading, sorry.
So, any other questions on first reading? Comments? Okay. Mr. Cruson?
So the section policy that I have is 6172.1, Gifted and Talented Students Program. This one is the K version. We started with the K version. We had Sherry Earl, who is in charge of our Gifted and Talented program in the district, look it over. There were actually two versions that Kay gave us, and this was the version that she liked. The biggest concern that the committee had, you'll notice that planning and placement team, PPT, is crossed out in the policy. There was a concern because at the bottom it talks about the fact that that the PPT would be composed of a group of certified or licensed professionals representing each of the teaching, administrative, and pupil personnel staffs. It does not include parents, which there was a concern about there being confusion because in special education, PPTs generally include parents. We did go back to Dr. Earl about that, and she mentioned that this is how the state defines how, so the state defines it as a PPT composed of those people. Parents are not included because these meetings look at all students that have been recommended for gifted and talented, and it would be a confidentiality issue. But she also mentioned that internally in the district, we call it a screening team, so that's why we made that language change in there. We have heard back from legal. I got the email like 10 minutes before the meeting started. They don't think there is a legal issue with changing it. They tend to err on the side of using the language that the state gives us. So they are in favor of using the planning and placement team, but they said that there is no issue with changing it. They don't know of any legal issue that would be of changing it. That would be caused by changing the screening team. So I would tend to support leaving the language to match the district practice in this case.
Any further discussion?
What? Which is screening team.
Would anyone like to comment on that now, or do you rather just wait and provide you
I'll make a comment based on all my times with these children, and I agree, the screening language is appropriate for what we're doing in this district, and we've been doing it, so there's no reason to change it.
any other?
I concur with Mr. Forrest.
Okay. Moving on to the minutes.
Oh, I just want to say, as always, if there are any questions or comments between now and next Wednesday, please email them to us so that we can take them up at our next policy meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crusoe. Moving on to minutes.
Move that the Board of Education approve the minutes of May 17th, 2022.
Motion made by Mr. Crusoe, seconded by Ms. Harriman. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
How's that?
6 are in favor, and abstentions. Mr. Boros abstains. That brings us to public participation. Is there any member of the public?
My name is Danielle Loser. I live at 1 Grade Road. I have 2 children in Newtown School for 57. My main reason for speaking today is to publicly thank Dr. Correa for his willingness to confront racism permanently. I'm referring to the letter informing parents about an uptick of the N-word being used by 5th and 6th graders in subsequent talk given by West Officer Chapman. A couple of months ago, I got a call from Dr. Gray, who told me that my son had reported to the teacher that a classmate said the N-word on him while he was walking home. He first told a friend, who convinced him to report it to the teacher. My son didn't come home that day. He didn't tell me or my husband what happened. He would have just internalized. But thank God I was given the opportunity to talk to him about it. Dr. Cray and I spoke at length. He told me that he was embarrassed of this happening and horrified that my son had to hear a word from his class. This is happening among 10 to 12-year-olds. 10 to 12. If this goes unchecked, to what level will this escalate for my son or daughter in middle school or high school? I spoke to this board in April about minority recruitment, and I told you that I grew up in a town that racially looks just like Newtown. I repeated to you some of the racial statements made against my siblings and myself in our schools. And here I am, 39 years later, and my son is being subjected to the same slurs. Myself and other members have come to this table week after week since at least last summer to talk to this board and community about why DEI, culturally responsive history, is an essential part of learning. We have also written letters to the board and via local Facebook groups to plead our case. We've asked for the school community to be educated in race relations through DEI initiatives. We've asked to make reporting incidents easier so we can bring solid proof that DEI is necessary. And this is exactly why. After the nation witnessed the George Floyd murder, some people acted. As a matter of fact, this board, the former board, acted by putting a DEA coordinator in place, promising all citizens of this town that we, Newtown, were going to do better. Imagine being me and having a sense of hope that the town we live in is going to be different from what we are seeing in the country. That nicer Newtown or being kind applies to all Newtowners. Let this letter from Dr. Correa be fair warning you. Now we all know. My son already heard the word. It can't be taken back. The scar is there. Dr. Cray is the principal of the school, and he has nothing to gain by revealing a letter that his school has this major problem. He did. And he moved not to punish, but to educate. And that's why I trust my kids being in this school. No, we're not living in 1960s Selma, Alabama. But I can tell you the same thing that was happening in Florida in the late 1980s happened to my son in Newtown in 2022. This is not progress. This coming school year, put it at the top of the list, educate our kids and teachers about the real history of this country and learn how not to make the same mistakes, because whatever we're doing now, it ain't working. I'm not going to go there. I hope I can see actions that every single parent on this board would expect and demand for their own kids. Thank you for your time. 6 years up and do your time.
Any further? Yes.
Linda Sullivan, at the back on the lane, executive. There is a partisan tendency to conflate all values and issues Black people face with all that disadvantages white men. There's a tendency to throw concepts such as affirmative action, critical race theory, and diversity, equity, and inclusion into the same bucket labeled bad for white boys. And then to move forward with that straw man argument has been a creative and flawed narrative. The most inexcusable part of this behavior is why I consider the troubling refusal to learn anything about the topics in this bucket of badness. Affirmative action is about encouraging employers and institutes of higher learning to consider applicants that are not white males. Not to the exclusion of white males, but in addition to white males. It is the legacy of affirmative action that allowed me to get an education at what had only been 15 years earlier an exclusively male school. It allows those of us who are not white men but are comparably skilled and capable to achieve success formerly denied us. Critical race theory is the study of how it is in the post-civil rights era that Black people continue to struggle to enjoy the level of success that white people enjoy, with a focus on structural and societal barriers that they may face. Maya Angelou famously said, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better." This is the essence of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is about. It's not about making white people feel guilty, as has been suggested. It's about helping people to know better so that they can do better and become kinder, more thoughtful people. While it is often associated with racial conflicts, it is about all kinds of conflicts. I was able to personally benefit from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative at my place of employment. I was dealing with a pattern of misogyny that was causing me a great deal of stress. I reached out to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion officer at my company. I told her I didn't want anyone to get into trouble, I just wanted it to stop. She let me know that that was what her job was about, getting it to stop. Not by pointing fingers, but by helping people to know better so they can do better. I know the board frequently hears from parties that do not want to make the effort to distinguish between different programs, but label them all as bad and disadvantaging white males and then cite them interchangeably as if they were all the same thing by a different name. I trust the board to know better. It is my understanding that Mr. Johnson addressed a problematic issue at Reed today by doing what the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion officer at my company proposed, not by calling out individuals for punishment, but by helping the attendants of his presentation to learn better so that they can do better. It is an approach based on kindness and respect that benefits everyone, no matter who you are. I am proud of my community for adopting this approach in its school system. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm from the beginning of Bridge Drive in Newtown. As a frequent attendee of the BOE meetings and a reader of the B, I've noted consistent criticism by some Newtown students in terms of supposed racial insensitivity, slurs, and worse. This, they say, is proof of the need for DEI-J remediation. The J indicating that Newtown is not only deficient in diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also in justice. I disagree. I say we need to worry far more about DEI than our kids. It isn't our kids who are consistently insinuating that they, their parents, and Newtown are racist. It's DEI. Why should anyone be surprised if an occasional kid acts consistent with what DEI is telling them they are to begin with? It's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. It isn't kids who have brought a fanatical obsession with race, sex, and gender into our schools. They didn't think of genetic males competing with genetic females for awards and scholarships, or equity clubs and equity closets to encourage young people to explore alternate gender identities, cross-dress, change their names, and explore transition options without the knowledge of their parents. That's the key. It was DEI that did that. It wasn't kids who came up with an avalanche of adjectives and pronouns overwhelming us, like Romexing and Latinx, both of which most women all show abhor, but must accept or be canceled. It wasn't kids who came up with false and insulting slogans like white privilege, white fragility, Newtown doesn't look like America. It was DEI. They didn't come up with privilege laws to humiliate white students or turn affirmative action into a thoroughly entrenched systemic racism against white males and Asians for at least 10 to 15 years now, in direct violation of Title VI and Title IX of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It was DEI that did that. Kids didn't pick up restorative justice, which allows offenders to reoffend with institutional privacy and secrecy with consequences that coddle bad behavior rather than deter. It was DEI that did that. Most Newtowners know that DEI is the public face of CRT, and CRT is the spear point of the social chaos movement stood for our nation. I ask the board to consider that millions of Americans are on the move in this country, fleeing DEI cities and DEI states are not flocking to them. You're the only thing standing between our kids and the racial gender chaos of DEI that it produces wherever it's been implemented. DEI has a track record. I ask you to consider that now. Thank you.
Dr. Rodriguez in his office.
That's correct. Move that the Board of Education go into executive session for the discussion and possible action on non-union wages and invite in Dr. Rodriguez in his office. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Cruson, seconded by Mr. Ramsey. Any discussion? All in favor to go to executive session, motion passes unanimously. Yeah, well, you're welcome to stay, the board has to, find a private space, and then we will come back out of session and, then do a possible vote on executive